They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but in the case of Robyn Brown, a picture is worth 1,000 lies. We have watched for over a decade as the dynamic in the Brown family shifted, twisted, and eventually shattered. But there is one specific moment that stands out as the absolute darkest turning point in the entire saga. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't a divorce decree, and it wasn't a moving truck. It was a drawing, a simple sketch that revealed a complex and deeply disturbing psychological need to rewrite reality. Fans have dubbed it the Frankenstein Portrait, a piece of custom art so delusional and manipulative that it literally pasted Kody's face over the past, erasing biological fathers and sister wives' children in one stroke. This wasn't just a bad gift, it was a declaration of war on the truth. And while Robyn cried her signature dry tears about creating a, quote, moment that didn't exist, the rest of the world saw it for what it truly was, a hostile takeover of the family history. But new reports and insider whispers suggest this obsession with curating a legacy hasn't stopped with a single sketch. In fact, it might be the only thing left holding the chaos in Flagstaff together. If you want to stay ahead of every twisted update, uncover the dark psychology behind reality TV's most controversial families, and get the deep dives that the networks try to hide, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications and smash the like button because we are about to expose the truth that no amount of photoshopping can hide. Let's go back to the scene of the crime. The family is gathered, the cameras are rolling, and Robyn is vibrating with that specific brand of nervous main character energy she always brings to sentimental moments. She unveils a custom sketch. At first glance, it looks like a standard, albeit slightly creepy, charcoal drawing of Kody holding 3 young children. To the untrained eye, it's just a dad with his kids. But to everyone sitting in that room and to the millions watching at home, the image was a shock to the system. The children in the picture were Robyn's kids, Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna, depicted as babies. The problem? Kody didn't know them when they were babies. He wasn't there. He didn't hold them. He didn't raise them. And he certainly wasn't the man in the photograph that the artist used as a reference. Robyn had literally commissioned an artist to take a photo of her children with their biological father, decapitate the bio dad, and graft a younger, fresher-faced Kody onto his body. The level of psychological gymnastics required to think this was a, quote, sweet gesture is actually terrifying. This goes beyond just being a clingy partner. This is history cancellation. By creating a physical object that depicts a reality that never happened, Robyn was signaling to the rest of the family that her version of the truth is the only one that matters. She wasn't just trying to integrate into the family. She was trying to retrofit the timeline so that she was always there. It's the behavior of someone who cannot tolerate being second, even to the linear passage of time. When she presented it, she tearfully claimed she created a moment that, quote, didn't exist. But what she really did was tell her children that their actual past and the father who was actually there were flaws in the system that needed to be corrected. But here is where the story gets even darker, and it's a detail that often gets overlooked in the general cringe of the moment. To get the correct angle of Kody to match the lighting and positioning of the children, Robyn didn't just pull a random headshot. The reference photo used for Kody was taken from a picture where he was holding Christine's children. Let that sink in for a second. In order to fabricate a fantasy where Kody was always the father to her kids, she literally had to erase Christine's children from their own father's arms. It is a metaphorical slaughter of the existing family structure. She physically replaced the OG Brown kids with her own progeny, creating a visual manifesto of what was to come. Christine had to sit there, forcing a smile, looking at a piece of art where her husband's embrace, an embrace that belonged to her children at that moment, was stolen and repurposed for the children of the woman who was actively dismantling her marriage. The reaction in the room was palpable. You could see the older kids shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting around, trying to process the uncanny valley horror staring back at them. It wasn't heartwarming, it was violating. It sent a clear message to the teenagers. Your memories don't matter. The only history that counts is the one Robyn pays for. And speaking of paying, this brings us to the financial irony that makes this entire situation even more infuriating. This wasn't a cheap sketch. Custom portraiture, especially rushed commissions for TV reveals, costs money. This was happening at a time when the family was constantly crying poverty, talking about finite resources, and stressing over how to feed that many mouths. Yet, there was always money for Robyn's revisionist history projects. It set a precedent that would follow them all the way to Flagstaff. Kody's money is for Robyn's wants, while the other wives' money is for the family's needs. Recently, there have been reports and whispers from sources claiming to be close to the situation in Flagstaff that suggest this portrait was just the tip of the iceberg. We are hearing rumors that the walls of the Shi-rah Chateau, Robyn's massive hoarding-filled mansion, are lined with similar artistic interpretations of reality. Speculation is swirling that Robyn has engaged in what insiders are calling digital scrapbooking, allegedly cropping the other wives out of old group photos or folding the edges of physical prints to hide Christine and Janelle, leaving only Kody and her legitimate brood visible. While these reports remain, they align perfectly with the psychology we saw with the portrait. If she was willing to do it on national television, imagine what she does in the privacy of her own home to soothe her insecurities. There is also a buzzing theory gaining traction online regarding the controversial love psalm painting seen in later seasons. Insider gossip suggests that as the family pot of gold has started to dwindle, Robyn has panicked, not by saving money, but by investing in what she believes are high-value legacy art pieces. Rumors suggest she convinced Kody that buying expensive, massive art was a way to park money, all while Janelle was living in a literal trailer and struggling to build a modest home. It paints a picture of a woman who is so obsessed with the aesthetic of a wealthy, happy, monogamous marriage that she is willing to bankrupt the actual family to maintain the image. The Frankenstein portrait was the first red flag, the first sign that Robyn valued the appearance of a perfect past over the reality of a blended present. Let's dig deeper into the trap moment. When Robyn was given this portrait, she created a double bind for everyone in the room. This is a classic manipulation tactic. If Kody or the wives expressed how weird and creepy it was, they would be accused of being unsupportive or jealous of her trying to blend the families. They would be the bad guys for rejecting a sentimental gift. But by accepting it, they were forced to validate her delusion. They had to nod and agree that, yes, it's wonderful to pretend Kody was there in 2005. It forced the family to participate in her lie. It's a power move masquerading as vulnerability. She weaponized her tears to ensure that no one could say, Robyn, this is weird, and you erased the kid's real dad. And we have to talk about the biological father, Preston. Whatever the situation was with their divorce, erasing a biological parent from the visual history of a child's life is deeply damaging. It tells the children that their origin story is shameful and that to be good kids, they must pretend they sprang fully formed from Kody's brow. It is a demand for total loyalty that requires a rejection of their own DNA. Fans have pointed out the cruelty of this for years, but recently, with the older kids aging up and speaking out, the backlash has intensified. There is speculation that the rift between Robyn and the adult children isn't just about COVID rules or texts. It goes back to moments like this, where they realized their stepmother viewed them as interchangeable props in her theater production of The Perfect Wife. The sheer audacity to present this in front of the cameras shows a lack of self-awareness that borders on pathological. But there is another layer here. Some armchair psychologists and eagle-eyed viewers believe that Kody's reaction to the portrait was the first crack in his own psyche. You can see a flicker of confusion in his eyes before he settles into his adored patriarch persona. Deep down, Kody knows he wasn't there. He knows he didn't raise those babies. But Robyn offers him something the other wives didn't: blind hero worship, even retroactive hero worship. She offers him a chance to be the hero in a story he didn't even participate in. It stroked his ego so hard that he was willing to ignore the blatant disrespect to his other children. It was the moment he chose the fantasy of Robyn over the reality of the rest of his family. But that wasn't the whole story. As the dust settled on the portrait reveal, something darker began to brew behind the scenes. The portrait didn't bring the family together. It acted as a repelling magnet, pushing the OG kids further away. And while Robyn thought she had solidified her place in the timeline, she had actually handed her critics the ultimate weapon: visual proof of her deception. And what happened next, according to fresh rumors hitting the internet, involves a shift from erasing the past to aggressively controlling the future. But if you think the portrait was just a one-off mistake, a singular lapse in judgment from a socially awkward woman, you are missing the terrifying bigger picture. The Frankenstein portrait wasn't an anomaly. It was the blueprint. It was the opening move in a game of single white female that Robyn has been playing against the other wives for years. Viewers have long suspected that Robyn didn't just want to join the family, she wanted to become the family, effectively consuming the roles of the other women until she was the only one left standing. And when you look at the portrait through this lens, it stops being a drawing and starts looking like evidence of identity theft. She didn't just want Kody to be a father to her children. She wanted him to be their father in the exact same way he was to Christine's kids. She wanted the history without the years of struggle. She wanted the original wife status without living in the trailer. This brings us to one of the most chilling theories currently circulating in the deep corners of the internet. There are whispers and fan investigations suggesting that Robyn has systematically attempted to replicate and replace the core memories of the other wives. We've seen reports that she tried to take over the role of the fun mom, a title held by Christine, and the business brain, a title held by Janelle. But because she couldn't actually perform those roles, she had to fabricate them visually. The portrait is the physical manifestation of "I can do it better." It is a claim that she could have been a better mother to Kody's children in the past than the women who were actually there. It's a rewriting of the narrative that suggests, if I had been there from the start, this family would be perfect. It creates a competitive revisionism where she wins a game that the other wives didn't even know they were playing. And let's talk about the money, because you cannot separate Robyn's emotional manipulation from the financial ruin of the Brown family. The portrait was expensive, but it was just the gateway drug. Recently, shocking allegations have surfaced regarding the family's finances in Flagstaff. While Janelle was living in a literal RV on a patch of dirt, worrying about paying off the land, rumors suggest Robyn was filling her million-dollar mansion with thousands of dollars worth of investment art. We aren't talking about IKEA prints here. We are talking about limited edition pieces, massive oil paintings, and custom work that cost more than some people's cars. The Love Psalm painting, a piece spotted in the background of her home, has become a focal point for online sleuths who estimate its value in the thousands. Why does this matter? Because it mirrors the psychology of the Frankenstein portrait perfectly. Robyn buys culture and class and history the same way she tried to buy Kody's fatherhood. She believes that if she fills her home with expensive objects, it makes her a legitimate high-status matriarch. It is a desperate attempt to curate an image of wealth and stability while the foundation of the family, the other three wives, is crumbling into dust. The hypocrisy is staggering. Kody screams about loyalty and financial responsibility to the other wives, effectively punishing them for wanting basic resources, while he allows Robyn to hemorrhage family funds on pretty things that serve only her ego. The portrait was the first time we saw them prioritize Robyn's fantasy over the family's reality. And now, years later, that same priority has allegedly drained the family bank accounts dry. But there is a darker psychological hook here that explains why Kody went along with it. Why would a man who prides himself on being the quote-unquote alpha leader allow his new wife to erase his past? The answer lies in Kody's own failures. By the time Robyn came around, Kody was already stretched thin. He was failing Christine, he was distant from Meri, and he was struggling to connect with his older children. When Robyn presented that portrait, she wasn't just rewriting her kid's history. She was rewriting Kody's. She was offering him a, quote, do-over. In that drawing, Kody gets to be the hero dad to 3 adoring children without having to do the diaper changes, the night feedings, or the financial struggle of the early years. He gets the glory of fatherhood with none of the grit. It feeds his narcissism in a way the other wives never could, because they remembered the truth. Christine remembers when Kody wasn't there. Janelle remembers the lean years. But Robyn offers him a blank slate where he is always the knight in shining armor. That portrait was a seductive lie for Kody. It told him, you are perfect. You were always perfect. And these children adore you blindly. It's no wonder he gravitated toward Robyn and away from the others. The others held him accountable to reality. Robyn built a shrine to his ego. And that is why the Frankenstein moment is the key to understanding the fall of the family. It was the moment Kody decided he preferred the painted lie to the messy truth. Now, we have to talk about the victims in the room who didn't have a voice. The children, specifically the older Brown kids. Watch that clip again. Look at the faces of the teenagers. It wasn't just teenage angst. It was deep, visceral discomfort. For the older kids like Logan, Hunter, and Aspen, this wasn't just a weird gift. It was a signal that their dad was being replaced by a version of himself that belonged solely to Robyn. When you take a photo of their biological siblings and paste over it, you are telling the OG kids that they are interchangeable. You are telling them that family is just a branding exercise, not a blood bond. Sources close to the family have long speculated that this was the moment the older boys specifically lost respect for Robyn. You can't force intimacy. You can't Photoshop a bond. By trying to force it, Robyn achieved the exact opposite. She highlighted the fact that she was an outsider trying to brute force her way into the center. It was the uncanny valley effect. It looked like family, but it felt like a violation. It is widely believed that this specific act of erasure contributed to the massive rift we see today between Kody and his adult sons. They saw their father agree to erase their memories to please his new favorite, and that is a wound that doesn't heal with a text message or an apology. There is also a trap mechanism at play here that Robyn has perfected over the years. By presenting this portrait as a tearful, vulnerable offering, she set a trap for the family. If anyone criticized it, if Christine had said, "This is inappropriate," or if the kids had laughed, Robyn would have instantly pivoted to victim mode. She would have cried about being rejected and misunderstood, and Kody would have attacked the family for being mean to her. This is the weaponization of fragility. She does something aggressive and dominant, like rewriting history, but packages it in tears and soft tones so that any pushback looks like bullying. The family learned very quickly that day. You must pretend to love Robyn's lies or you will be punished by Kody. And don't ignore the news angle that keeps popping up in forums and discussion boards. There are theories that Robyn has done this with other things too, rewriting the history of the jewelry business, claiming credit for family traditions that were actually Christine's, and even trying to rename the family's narrative to center around her entry into the family. The portrait is just the only time she got caught on camera doing it so blatantly. It proves that her default setting is manipulation. She doesn't adapt to the environment. She forces the environment to adapt to her delusional timeline. The fallout from this single decision has rippled through the years. We are now seeing the ultimate consequence of the Frankenstein mindset. Kody is now living in a monogamous marriage with Robyn, surrounded by her children, while his biological children with the other wives are scattered and estranged. In a twisted, dark irony, the portrait came true. She succeeded. She effectively erased the other families from Kody's daily life, leaving only her and her children in the picture. The drawing was a prophecy. She visualized a world where Kody was only a father to her kids, and through years of manipulation, victimhood, and wedge driving, she manifested that exact reality. But the story doesn't end with the portrait hanging on a wall. In fact, the most shocking part of this saga is what happened when the fans started connecting the dots. The backlash was severe, but instead of apologizing or explaining, Robyn and Kody doubled down. And this brings us to the latest, most disturbing rumors about what is happening inside that house right now. If you think the portrait was bad, wait until you hear about the loyalty tests and the alleged rewriting of the will. The erasure of the OG family has moved from Photoshop to legal documents, and the stakes have never been higher. The transition from emotional erasure to legal and financial erasure is where this story stops being just a reality TV drama and becomes a tragedy. If the Frankenstein portrait was the draft, the current state of the Brown family finances is the final print. There are chilling rumors circulating among the most dedicated investigative communities that suggest Robyn has effectively photoshopped the family trust just as easily as she photoshopped that sketch. We are seeing reports of LLCs being formed, assets being moved, and names being removed from titles, specifically the names of the original wives. It is the same pattern we saw in that living room years ago. Remove the evidence of the past, paste over it with Robyn's name, and present it as the new reality. The portrait was a warning shot that told us exactly how she operates. She doesn't build, she annexes. And just like she pasted a new face over the biological father of her children, speculation suggests she is now pasting her own name over the assets that Janelle and Christine spent decades building. This brings us to the loyalty tests, a concept that Kody has weaponized in recent seasons, but whose roots can be traced directly back to that awkward reveal. The portrait was the very first loyalty test. It was a litmus test for the entire family. Those who fawned over it, like Meri, who was desperate to stay in Kody's good graces, were deemed safe. Those who stared in comfortable silence or expressed confusion, like the older boys, were marked as unsafe. It established a terrifying precedent. To be loved by Kody, you must participate in Robyn's delusion. You must agree that the sky is green if Robyn paints it green. The estrangement we see today between Kody and his sons, Garrison and Gabriel, isn't just about COVID rules. It is about a decade of being told that their reality doesn't matter as much as Robyn's feelings. The portrait told them that their father was willing to cannibalize their childhood memories to feed his new wife's insecurity. And this is where the self-own becomes truly catastrophic for Robyn. She has spent 15 years crying on camera, begging the audience to see her as the scapegoat, the brown-haired punching bag, the woman who just wanted everyone to get along. But the internet never forgets, and the internet keeps receipts. The Frankenstein Portrait has become the single most damaging piece of evidence against her. It is the smoking gun that proves her intent was never integration. It was replacement. Fans have unearthed the original photo used for the sketch, the one where Kody was holding Christine's children, and placed it side by side with Robyn's creation. The visual is damning. It shows a calculated, predatory need to steal the joy from the other wives. You cannot claim to want a sisterhood while literally cutting your sisters out of the frame. It proved that her tears were a manipulation tactic, designed to cover up the sound of her scissors cutting the other wives out of the picture. The irony here is almost Shakespearean. Robyn wanted that portrait to solidify her place in the family, to make her children feel like they had always been there. But instead, it highlighted exactly why they never would be. It drew a sharp, permanent line between the Brown family and Robyn's family. It didn't blend them, it isolated them. It made the older kids realize that their father had been compromised. They saw a man who was so manipulated that he couldn't see how grotesque the gesture was. It was the moment the Kody they knew died, replaced by the Kody Robyn wanted him to be. And now, years later, Robyn sits in a mansion filled with expensive art and precious moments figurines. But she sits there alone with Kody. The big family gatherings are gone. The chaotic, loving mess of the early seasons is gone. She erased them so effectively that she erased herself right out of the community she claimed she wanted to join. There is a rumors versus reality dynamic playing out right now that suggests Kody is trying to rewrite his will and estate planning to favor Robyn's children exclusively, effectively Frankensteining the inheritance. Insiders speculate that he justifies this by claiming the other wives have left him. Therefore, their children are no longer his responsibility. It's the portrait philosophy applied to real life. If you aren't in the picture Robyn drew, you don't exist. This is the ultimate betrayal. The other wives worked, saved, and contributed to the family pot for decades, only to watch a woman who never contributed a dime commission art that mocks their existence and then allegedly siphon off the remaining funds. It is a slow-motion heist broadcast on national television. But the most tragic element of this entire saga is the failed emotional appeal. Robyn truly believed the world would see that portrait and say, "Aw, look how much she loves him." She operates on such a high level of narcissism that she cannot conceive of a world where her actions are interpreted as creepy or manipulative. When the audience recoiled, she didn't reflect, she blamed. She blamed the fans for being bullies. She blamed the other wives for poisoning the audience. And she blamed the kids for not being welcoming. She has become the victim of her own creation. She stitched together a family, and when the seams started to burst, she cried that nobody appreciated her sewing skills. Let's look at the point of no return. The portrait was the moment the mask slipped. Before that, we could argue that maybe she was just socially awkward or trying too hard. But you don't accidentally commission a historical revisionist sketch. That takes planning, money, and intent. It takes a specific kind of person to look at a photo of her husband with his other children and think, I can fix this. It revealed a deep-seated jealousy of the life Kody had before her. She couldn't handle the fact that he had a past, so she tried to excise it like a tumor. And in doing so, she killed the host. The family couldn't survive that level of toxicity. The Frankenstein nature of her behavior, taking bits and pieces of the other wives' lives to build her own, ultimately created a monster that destroyed the plural marriage. As we look at the current state of the show, with Christine gone, Janelle gone, and Meri finally seeing the light, the portrait hangs in the background of our minds as the symbol of everything that went wrong. It represents the lie at the center of the Brown family, that Kody is a patriarch leading a united family. In reality, he is a puppet master for one wife's ego. The Frankenstein portrait is no longer just a drawing. It is a tombstone for the family that used to be. It serves as a permanent reminder that you cannot force history, you cannot buy respect, and you certainly cannot Photoshop love. The more Robyn tried to tighten her grip on the narrative, the more the truth slipped through her fingers. This brings us to the final uncomfortable truth. Robyn Brown didn't just want to be a wife, she wanted to be the wife. And she succeeded. She won the prize. She got the man, she got the legal marriage, she got the mansion, and she got the portrait. But look at the cost. She is left with an angry, bitter man who has lost the respect of his children and the adoration of the public. She is the queen of a kingdom of rubble. The Frankenstein experiment failed, not because the parts didn't fit, but because it had no heart. It was a simulation of a family, not the real thing. And now the world watches as she tries to maintain the illusion, but the cracks are too wide to hide. The portrait remains a frozen scream of a woman desperate to be written into a story that was already being told without her. And in her desperation, she ended the story for everyone else. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the psychology of reality TV's most controversial moments and want to keep uncovering the dark truths they try to edit out, you know what to do. The algorithm hates the truth, so we need you to fight back. Smash that like button to help this video spread. Leave a comment below with your theory on what Robyn will try to erase next. And make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. We are just scratching the surface of the Brown family secrets, and trust me, you do not want to miss what we uncover next. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth is always in the details.